to IAS by Heart. In the Prelims High series, we are with the Polity Class 4. So hopefully the sessions have been continuing for your benefit on a free manner, and we request you to use it to the utmost for the cracking of the prelims. So there is a lot of effort which is put to define the subject areas and to find the possible questions and the pattern of the UPSC questioning, everything we are putting in and all the subjects possible. So kindly I request you to suggest to any of your friends also so that they can take the benefit out of this series. Okay, so let's start with the session. So we have completed 30 questions. Now here we are with the 31st question. Consider the following statements. The Parliament can make laws for the whole or any part of the territory of India. It is talking about the power of the Parliament to make the laws. So clearly we are saying the word Parliament to whole or any part of the territory of India. So this is simple and most of you must be knowing it. Yes, it is true. Next, the Parliament and state legislatures can make laws with respect to any of the matters of the state. So usually the pattern of UPSC is UPSC will try to give you some statement where you assume that yes, I know it. Thereafter UPSC will give you a question in a statement in that context only, and with that similar assumption you will be making the next statement little wrong. That assumption will go wrong. So in the above statement, we are sure that it can make the laws in any part of the country. But at the same time, can the state legislatures aspects also, can it touch the matters of the state or not, is the second statement. So now the Parliament and the state legislators can make laws with respect to any of the matters of the state. So the question is very clear if you look at individually only the statement 2. But if you read the statement 1, then you are reading the statement 2, then you will get into the conflict. That is a beauty of the UPSC. Okay. So we know that the statement 2 is wrong because we have a separate state list. That is important thing which you have to remember. Only in emergency conditions, the Parliament will be able to make the laws on the matters of the state. That we have to remember. Okay. If it is concurrent list, we all know. So the known information only, how it can be made complicated, that is a concept of UPSC. So now what they are asking, are they asking correct or incorrect? Incorrect they are asking. So statement 2 is incorrect. So B should be the answer. So B is the answer. The Parliament can make the laws for the whole or any part of the territory of India. That we know. It is a repetitive statement. And you also know that you have 3 lists: union list, state list and concurrent list. But beauty of the sentences is that like when they combine both and then they ask you, then in that confusion, in that contextual confusion, you will get to make some mistakes. So that is the purpose of this question. Okay. So union list, state list and the concurrent list, and the state list is exclusive power to make the laws in the state list for the state in the normal conditions. So as a statement was a general statement, we assume that it is a normal condition only. And if we are talking about any exclusive conditions, then we would also have made up a mind that in emergency, the Parliament can make the laws for the state list also. That's one thing. So now the 32nd question. The President can proclaim a national emergency only after receiving a written recommendation from the Council of Ministers. So they are talking about a national emergency, not state one. And then we know that there has been a lot of discussion about the emergency in the recent times also, and the possibility of emergency in the name of the war or internal rebellion, armed rebellion, etc. So the questions can come from the basic areas of these topics. So that's why we are referring this point. So after the Indira Gandhi declaration of the emergency, we have made certain changes in the constitution. And then we have said that we need to have a written recommendation, then only a president can give the national emergency or declare. And it is not that easy to declare national emergency right now. So we know that we need recommendation and in the written format. But who, from whom we are expecting it? So that is, we are expecting it from the Please write it down from where we are expecting. Is it Council of Ministers only? So that word was first time added in the Constitution. So that is Cabinet, not the Council of Ministers. Okay. So the word is Cabinet, and for the first time we have added this word in the Constitution when we have made this amendment in the Constitution. The proclamation of emergency must be approved by both the Houses of Parliament within 15 days of the date of its issue. So yes, the proclamation of emergency should be accepted, then only it will be considered. So is it 15 days or not is the question right now. So it is not the 15 days. Please write it down how many days it is. So the statement 1 is wrong and the 2 is also wrong. So what should be your answer? The C is the answer. So let's check the statement very clearly here again. So President, however, can proclaim the national emergency after receiving the written recommendation from the Cabinet. The Cabinet. For the first time, you have used the word Cabinet here in the Constitution. That is one thing. Thereafter, the proclamation of emergency must be approved by both the Houses of the Parliament within 1 month. That is 1 month, not 15 days. See, if you ask me, in the total Constitution, you will have 10 areas where you will get the months and the days. So how many days, how many months? Is it 3 months or 6 months? In the anti-defection law, in the parliament sessions, the gap between the sessions and the decision making, in the Panchayat Raj system, after how many months you have to conduct the elections. All these, if you make it into a A4 size paper and take it as 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 like that, then that is the best kind of revision you can make it. So that is what you are supposed to do. In the history, taking all the terms together. In the geography, taking all the different kind of examples together. So in that way, in the polity also, you should take this kind of comparative confusion ones, 1 month or 2 months, president or governor, like that. You have to put it into a paper in a chat form. Then like keep it somewhere where you can see it again and again, so that confusion you will not have in the exam hall. Okay. So let's check the next question, 33.1. So consider the following statements. The Supreme Court judge can resign his office by writing to the Chief Justice of India. So to whom the Supreme Court judge has to submit the resignation? I guess this is an easy point, isn't it? So is it to the Chief Justice of India? Can he submit it to the Chief Justice of India? So how you assume the logical possible things only UPSC will ask you. That is an important thing. So let's check the statement 2. The salaries, allowances, privileges, everything of the judge of the Supreme Court are determined from time to time by the president. Allowances, privileges, leave, pension, everything, is it decided by the president? Is it? So from where does the judges get their salary? And like by whom it is decided? So that statement you have to remember. As I have said, is it by the president or parliament? That word you should not have any confusion in your mind. So obviously the statement 1 is wrong and the statement 2 is also wrong. So let's check the answer. The Supreme Court judge can resign his office by writing it to the president. So the first statement should have the word president, not by the Chief Justice of India. That I guess you know it. So then the fixed salaries, allowances, privileges and the pensions of the Supreme Court judges are fixed from time to time by Parliament, not President. This is a trap. This is a trap, and at least the trap was very clear. If you look at the President word below, you will assume that okay, in the statement 1 I need to have the President. Statement 1 was little easy to identify. If you got confused in the statement 1 also, then you are in a lot of confusion to remember the things. So better like you remember who appoints, who removes, to whom the resignation can be submitted. Okay, that is a little easy for a revising candidate. But even for a revising candidate also, these kind of statements can be trap. Like where the parliament has to come, where you assume the president has to come but the parliament comes. So that you have to keep a very clear detail of. Okay, so it is parliament, not the president. Then the question number 34. So consider the following statements. Statement 1, social action litigation is a product of judicial activism role of the Supreme Court. So first thing is that what is social active action litigation, SAL. So you must be knowing that pill is also considered as SAL. I have just used a different statement so that it will be a little more informative. That's it. Then statement 2, public interest litigation. Any member of the public having sufficient interest can approach the court by enforcing the rights of the other person. That is a concept of PIL actually. PIL itself is to pose a litigation on behalf of someone else. So that is purely, if you have read the chapter, even in the beginning paragraph itself, you will get to know that what is PIL. Or if you have referred any pill under the Article 21 cases also, you know the concept of the pills, or how do you file and why do you file the pills. Everything which happened in the country on a vast level, changing things, that is all by the pills. Like be it the ban on the public smoking, be it the ban on the pollution things in the Delhi, and Sabarimala issue, triple talaq issue, everything has come from the pill only. So I hope that you know that area very clearly. Public interest litigation is an exception to this traditional rule of locus standi. So traditional rule of locus standi means who is accused and who is the culprit and who is the victim, and like can the victim only file the case. That is a locus standi, like the locus nucleus part of it, like having that stand and the verifiable stand of it. So this is an exception because someone else can file it. So if you are clear with this locus standi word, then this statement should be easy. If you are not clear with this statement, if you are not clear with this word locus standi, then the statement will be little confusing, because this second statement is supportive to the third statement. The third statement is using critical words, and the second statement is saying the same thing in a simple words. So finally the answer is C, because the statement 1, 2 and 3 all are correct. Okay, I have made this question little easy and foundational, and because the UPSC concentrates on the topic which is more into the news in the foundational values, just it makes it critical by using the words like locus standi or like social action litigation, etc. That is how like we are making it the flavor of UPSC. So now the public interest litigation is also called as a class action litigation also in various ways, and the person like who is not having any relation to the person who is victimized also can file it, and the sufficient interest is enough, and like where you are giving it as a model kind of judgment for the further coming decisions also. That is an important concept here. So next question, 35th one. Consider the following statements. This is an interesting question. Observe it. The term ministries is used only in the center, not in the states. Is it? The term ministry or ministries is used only in the center, not in the states. If you know it, it's an easy question. If you don't know it, then you are in a confusion in the exam hall. The state government is divided into departments, not ministries. So the second statement is somewhere like trying to support the first statement. It is saying that what they are called as. So this government is divided into departments, not ministries. So this is a logical way also you can get the answer. But what they are asking for the incorrect statement. So both the statements are correct actually. So D should be the answer. So the ministry or ministries word is not used in the states. It is only used in the center. Some news people or like some TV channels might be doing this mistake, but that should not be the foundational blunder in your studying. So even in the Lakshmikant or the DD Basu, it is made very clear. Have you given any heed to it or not is the point. Okay. So as I have said, it's an easy question if you know. If you don't know, it will be creating confusion regarding the common knowledge you have from the society. Okay. So the cabinet ministers head the important departments, not the ministries in the state. And the term ministry or ministries is only used in center, not in the states. So that is what we are talking about. So both the statements are correct, and they have asked for the incorrect. So obviously the answer will be D. So next question, this is a single liner and little complicated. As I have said, the single liners are complicated, but I have made this question little easy. Which of the following is not an element of state under the Article 12? We know that the definition of Article 12 is very, very dynamic and electric, where it changes with every case which is coming into its context. So there was a case on the State Bank of India, and like we know that State Bank of India comes under the definition of Article 12, but they are clearly asking what doesn't come under the Article 12. Okay. So United Nations, is it a possibility that United Nations can come under the definition of Article 12? So that's a doubt. Rule making power of judiciary. So Article 12, anybody who has read it from the Lakshmikant knows that the judiciary part is not included in the Article 12, isn't it? Executive, legislature is included, but the word judiciary is not included. That is the important thing. And the Bharat Petroleum Corporation. So the Bharat Petroleum Corporation, in a way it can come, because easily it is recognized and it is funded and it is an authority. So obviously it comes, and that is not a difficult option to confuse you. So the confusion should be between the United States and also the rule making power of the judiciary. And if you assume that Article 12 didn't use the word judiciary at all, so it may not come, then you will be making a lot of mistake. So in the recent judgment, the Delhi High Court has clearly said that the United Nations doesn't come under the definition of Article 12 or the state. That's why this question I have given. So where it is a combination of dynamic area and also the static part of Article 12. So that is one thing. And thereafter I have compiled other cases also, so that if you have any doubt. So this Som Prakash versus Union of India declares easily that the Bharat Petroleum Corporation under the definition of Article 12. Thereafter, the Antole versus Nayak and the Mirajkar versus State of Maharashtra case has decided that the rule making power of judiciary is concerned with the state definition only. As I have said, administration's rule making, all these things will be considering under the state definition. In all my classes, I have said very clearly to whoever attend my polity classes. And whoever doesn't attend, I am making it clear once again. So the rule making power, the admission power, the administrative power of the judiciary comes under the definition of state. The verdict power and the exercise of judicial power and that advising power, all these things doesn't come under the definition of the state. So obviously, what was the question? That what doesn't come under the definition of the state. So rule making comes. State Bank of India automatically comes. Bharat Petroleum Corporation, yes, it does come. So the answer is, in the recent court judgments, it has been said that United Nations. That is easy to guess until unless you are not mistaking the rule making power of judiciary. So then the question number 37, consider the following statements. The Constitution provides for the mechanism of joint sitting of two houses of the state legislatures to resolve a deadlock. So everybody might have read the joint sitting mechanism. Now the simple logic is that if you remember or you overlook this word, then the question goes wrong. If you have seen the word very clearly that they are asking about the state, then you are in the consciousness. So for the states, is there any joint sitting? No. For the states, there is no joint sitting at all. So because the council's availability and unavailability is not uniform all over the country. So that joint sitting is not available to the state legislatures. Okay. So the statement 2, the deadlock between the two houses takes place when the legislative council, after receiving bill passed by the legislative assembly, does not pass the bill within 6 months. Is it? So the deadlock, joint sitting is not possible, but deadlock is possible. So when does the deadlock takes place? It takes place if the bill doesn't get passed between 6 months, is it? So 6 months is a maximum gap which should be there between one session and the other session of the house. So is it 6 months, or is it mentioned how many months is it? So it is 3 months. As you can see, it is 3 months, and the Constitution does not provide any mechanism of joint sitting for the state legislatures. It is there for the parliament, and here in the states you will not have it. So for the deadlock, you consider that this bill is in the deadlock because one house has passed it and the other house didn't pass it yet, and they are having certain problems with it. So that will be decided in a span of 3 months, not 6 months. Earlier also I have said in that 15 days question that you have to have a clear clarity where it is, how much length of the time. So though you know the total statement correct or wrong, if you get confused in this thing, then it will be a very bigger problem in the exam tension. Okay. So next, it's question number 38. So they are asking you to identify the incorrect statement regarding the sedition law. So I have taken this area specifically because there is a lot of news going on the sedition law in India right now. So maybe it is not in the mainstream media, but we all know that the sedition law is very actively working in the past few years. So sedition law is under section 124 of Indian Penal Code. As you might have read in most of the newspapers, this is not something which is very difficult to identify. It should be known to anyone who is regularly reading the newspaper. The punishment under section 124A sedition is non-bailable offence. Is it non-bailable? Is it? If you have heard it in the news, you can recollect it. Is it non-bailable? Yes, it is non-bailable. That's the total problem with it. It is non-bailable, and since before the independence it has been like that, now also it is like that. That's how it is a problem. The third statement, or the third option, a person charged under this law can't apply for a government job. Is it? So a person charged under this law can't apply for a government job, the sedition law. Let me explain the sedition law for someone who is new with this word. Sedition law is when you are speaking something against to the country, speaking something against to the sovereignty of the country or the uniformity of the country in any form, be it in a diagrammatic, be it like you are supporting some other country, and like you are creating panic in the country, or you are creating any security threat for the country, then you will be arrested under the sedition law. If you have read the modern Indian independence, then the Rowlatt Act, which you have seen, that was also a sedition act. Like speaking against the British government was the main criteria. 1919 I'm talking about. So later after this is very later one. So sedition law are very stringent for any of the country, because the country's utmost loyalty is more important. So sedition law is when you are against the country or for the threat of the country, this will be applied. So it is non-bailable, and the person who is arrested under this law cannot apply for the government job. So that's why please remember that whatever the comments you are posting anywhere, or whatever the views or the opinions you are giving, even if you are arrested under this law, it will be very difficult for you to come out from the clutches of this law. That is important. Recently, many of the journalists have been arrested. That's why I have taken up this question. Okay. So 124 of the Penal Code, it falls under, and then like it was drafted by the Mopton Macleay. I have told you that like it is related to the Macleay and the Britishers. Thereafter, like we are continuing with certain changes. So it is non-bailable, and the people who are arrested cannot apply for the government job. So these points you remember. I'm sure like UPSC may not involve in these areas, but UPSC would always concentrate which is more and more in the news, and which has the static part relevance also. So that's why it becomes important. Then the 39th question. So the Law Commission is a non-statutory body. So the Law Commission is a body constituted by Government of India every 3 years. So if you look at both the statements, they look like contradictory to each other, isn't it? The Law Commission is a non-statutory body, and the Law Commission is constituted by Government of India every 3 years. So point is that if you have read the reports of the Law Commission, you will know that it is constituted every 3 years. That is not a difficult thing to understand. Every UPSC aspirants read the reports of the Law Commission, as much as I know, who is preparing for mains or like with the reports and even the ethics suggestions you are quoting, you take it from the Law Commission. It is more authentic in nature. The Law Commission is a non-statutory body. That is a whole confusion. Is it a non-statutory body or not? So yes, it is a non-statutory body actually. So both the statements are correct. The answer will be C. Okay. So it is a non-statutory body constituted by the Government of India every 3 years. So the major function is for the legal reform, works as an advisory body for the Ministry of Law and Justice. So it has given various important suggestions for the Indian management of various departments, not just the judicial area, various other departments also, it gives the advices. So the first Law Commission was established in the British era 1834 by the Charter Act of 1833. So in the Charter Act, whenever I discuss in the class, I clearly tell you that many of the things which are related to the law or the IPC sections, they are all taken from the 1833. So the section 377, your LGBT rights, or you can talk about any other kind of adultery offenses, everything. So the Charter Act is related to the Christianity or the sanction of the religious things at that point of time. That's why it was having too many restrictions in the society, and they have started punishing various kind of activities which were not punished in India before that. So at that time, the Law Commission was very, very stringent. In that way, you can correlate and remember. Charter itself is different from the Councils or Government of India Act. So finally, the last question, 40. So identify the incorrect statement regarding Prevention of Corruption Amendment Act 2018. So this is also a recent one, which is from the news itself. So Prevention of Corruption Act was amended in 2018. And if you have referred it, then it should be easy. If you have not referred it, then let's see that how far you can guess it. This act replaced Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. So they are asking you to identify the incorrect statement. Usually, when UPSC gives the information itself by mentioning the year and all, most of the times it is correct. So that's the same thing I'm following here. This act shifted the burden of proof from prosecution to the accused. So what exactly got amended in this act is the concern here. That is a genuinity. So the burden of proof is shifted from prosecution to accused. So point is that before, what used to happen is that now if I'm complaining that this person has taken the bribe, then I have to make all the effort to prove that he has taken the bribe. I have to put a camera, I have to do everything, and until the end of the discussion, I have to prove that he has taken the bribe. But now what happens is that if I complain that he has taken the bribe, then it will be his duty to prove that he has not taken the bribe. So that burden of proof is an important concept in the prosecution. So in that way, that burden of proof is distributed from here to there, so that he has to prove himself not guilty. That is an important concept. So the MPs and MLAs have been kept out of this act, is it? Yes, we all know that the MPs and MLAs have been kept out of this act. Okay. So what is the answer? They are asking for the incorrect statement. So it is none of the above. So the D should be your answer. So the Department of Personnel and Training issued guidelines, and this amendment has come into limelight. So this amendment is little older, 2018, but it is more and more into the news in 2019. So as UPSC is asking 1.5 year related issues also, I felt this is important to be asked right now. So the act shifted the burden of proof from prosecution to accused, and the MPs and MLAs are not included in this act. That is the important thing which you have to remember. So special judges will be appointed, and they will be having the special courts to inquiry these cases, and they can be the retired ones or the special appointed ones, that you can refer in the amendment details very clearly. But the total concern and our effort is that you please refer the topics which we are trying to bring into the limelight through this series, and all we are putting forward is that you will reach more and more nearer to your cutoff from all the subject questions which we are giving here. So make the utmost use of it, and please forward it to any of the known friends also.